Staff Sergeant Rachel Martinez stared at the mountain of invoices piled 3 feet high on her desk. After 8 years of cybersecurity operations across 3 continents, the Army had rewarded her expertise with the thrilling task of processing vendor payments for office supplies. But what her supervisors at Fort Brennan didn't realize was that they had just handed a digital warfare specialist the keys to their most sensitive systems. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Rachel pushed another stack of paper receipts to the side of her cramped desk in Building 47. Room 203 housed the base's administrative overflow, a windowless purgatory where careers went to die. The irony wasn't lost on her that just 18 months ago, she had been briefing Pentagon officials on advanced persistent threats from foreign adversaries. Her fall from grace began with a single incident report. During a joint exercise with NATO forces in Estonia, Rachel had identified critical vulnerabilities in their communication protocols. Instead of following proper channels, she had taken it upon herself to demonstrate these weaknesses by accessing classified ally networks. Her intentions were pure: expose the flaws before enemy actors could exploit them. But good intentions rarely survived military bureaucracy. The court-martial never materialized. Rachel's commanding officer, Colonel Harrison Webb, understood her value too well to let legal proceedings destroy her career entirely. Instead, he orchestrated a different kind of punishment: transfer to Fort Brennan's logistics division, where her technical skills would atrophy while she learned the importance of following orders. "Martinez," barked Sergeant First Class Kevin Torres from across the room, "those supplier contracts aren't going to file themselves." Torres had made Rachel's life miserable since day one. A 22-year veteran who had never touched a computer beyond email, he resented having someone with her background under his command. Every menial task came with a lecture about humility and respect for the chain of command. Rachel picked up her coffee mug, a faded souvenir from her deployment in Afghanistan, and walked to the break room. The base ran on a network infrastructure that most Fortune 500 companies would envy, yet here she sat processing paper forms like it was 1985. The waste of human resources was staggering, but pointing this out had only earned her additional filing duties. As she poured coffee from the perpetually half-empty pot, Rachel noticed Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Hayes entering the building. Hayes ran the base's cybersecurity division, Rachel's former domain before her exile to administrative purgatory. The woman's presence here was unusual. Officers of her rank typically avoided Building 47 like a quarantine zone. Hayes spotted Rachel immediately. "Staff Sergeant Martinez, I need to speak with you." They walked to an empty conference room where Hayes closed the door and activated a white noise generator, standard protocol for sensitive conversations. "We have a situation," Hayes began without preamble. 3 hours ago, someone breached our secure networks. They accessed personnel files, deployment schedules, and classified operational data. Our cybersecurity team has been working around the clock, but they can't identify the intrusion vector. Rachel set down her coffee cup. "With respect, ma'am, I'm not authorized for cybersecurity operations. Sergeant Torres has me processing invoices for the next 6 months. I spoke with Colonel Webb. He's giving you temporary reassignment." Hayes pulled out a tablet and showed Rachel a series of network logs. The breach originated from within our own systems. Someone with intimate knowledge of our architecture bypassed every security measure we had in place. The logs revealed a sophisticated attack pattern. The intruder had used legitimate administrative credentials to access low-security systems, then leveraged a series of privilege escalation techniques to reach classified databases. Most concerning was how they had covered their tracks. Each step of the intrusion appeared routine until viewed as a complete sequence. "This wasn't some script kiddie or opportunistic hacker," Rachel observed. "Whoever did this spent months mapping our internal systems. They knew exactly which protocols to exploit and which monitoring systems to avoid." Hayes nodded grimly. "That's what concerns us. The attacker demonstrated knowledge that should only exist among a handful of people with top-secret clearance. We're looking at a potential insider threat." Rachel studied the attack timeline more carefully. The breach occurred during shift change when network monitoring was its lightest. The intruder had accessed systems using maintenance credentials that were scheduled for routine updates. Every decision showed intimate familiarity with Fort Brennan's operational rhythms. "Have you considered that this might be a test?" Rachel asked. "A test of what?" "Your cybersecurity team's capabilities. The attack pattern is almost too perfect, like someone wanted to demonstrate every vulnerability in your network without actually causing permanent damage." Hayes frowned. "That's an interesting theory, but we can't afford to assume benign intentions. If this information reaches hostile actors, it could compromise operations across multiple theaters." Rachel handed back the tablet. "Ma'am, I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm not sure how much help I can be. Your team has resources and access levels I don't possess. They're better equipped to handle this investigation." "Perhaps," Hayes replied, "but they've been working on this for 3 hours without progress. Sometimes fresh eyes see patterns that others miss." The offer was tempting. Rachel's skills had deteriorated during months of administrative work, but the challenge of tracking a sophisticated intruder appealed to her competitive instincts. More importantly, successful resolution of this incident could accelerate her path back to meaningful work. "What level of system access would I have?" she asked. "Full administrative privileges for the duration of the investigation. You'd work directly with our incident response team, but you'd have autonomy to pursue any leads you identify." Rachel considered the implications. Unrestricted network access was exactly what she needed to prove her value to the command structure. If she could solve this puzzle while the regular cybersecurity team struggled, it would demonstrate that her administrative exile had been counterproductive. "What level of system access would I have?" she asked. "I'll need a workstation with full forensic capabilities and direct access to all affected systems," she said finally. Hayes smiled for the first time during the conversation. "Already arranged. Your temporary office is in the Cybersecurity Division's secure facility." As they left the conference room, Rachel felt a familiar excitement building. For the first time in months, she would be doing work that mattered. The irony of her situation wasn't lost on her. The same rebellious instincts that had landed her in administrative purgatory might now provide the key to solving Fort Brennan's most pressing security crisis. Walking across the base toward the cybersecurity facility, Rachel began mentally cataloging the attack vectors she would investigate first. The intruder's sophistication suggested military or intelligence training, which narrowed the suspect pool considerably. But something about the timing and methodology nagged at her analytical mind. This breach felt personal somehow, as if the attacker knew exactly which buttons to push to create maximum disruption while minimizing actual damage. That level of surgical precision required more than technical expertise. It demanded intimate knowledge of Fort Brennan's command structure and operational priorities. Rachel pushed through the secure facilities entrance, her badge granting access to areas she hadn't seen in over a year. Whatever games were being played here, she intended to uncover the truth. The cybersecurity facility hummed with activity as Rachel entered the main operations center. Banks of monitors displayed network traffic patterns, threat assessment dashboards, and real-time security alerts from across Fort Brennan's digital infrastructure. The contrast with her administrative exile was jarring. Here, technology served its intended purpose rather than gathering dust while humans pushed paper. Technical Sergeant Maria Valdez looked up from her workstation as Rachel approached. Valdez had been Rachel's protege before the Estonia incident, a brilliant analyst who understood both the technical and political aspects of military cybersecurity. Her expression mixed relief with curiosity. "Staff Sergeant Martinez," Valdez said formally, though her tone carried warmth. "Lieutenant Colonel Hayes briefed us on your temporary assignment. We've prepared a workstation with full forensic tools and isolated network access." The designated workspace occupied a corner of the operations center, equipped with 3 high-resolution monitors and specialized hardware for deep packet analysis. Rachel settled into the chair and began reviewing the evidence her former colleagues had compiled. The attack timeline painted a disturbing picture. The intruder had first accessed the network at 0347 hours using credentials belonging to Corporal James Mitchell, a maintenance technician who had been on leave for the past week. The login originated from a workstation in the communications building, but security cameras showed no unauthorized personnel in that area during the relevant time frame. How did Mitchell's credentials get compromised? Rachel asked. Sergeant Michael Rodriguez, the team's senior analyst, pulled up additional data. That's where things get interesting. Mitchell's account showed normal usage patterns until 3 days ago, when someone began accessing systems outside his authorized scope. But the access attempts were spaced out over 72 hours and mixed with legitimate activities. Rachel studied the access logs more carefully. The pattern was sophisticated. Whoever compromised Mitchell's account had spent days learning his normal behavior before attempting the actual breach. They accessed the same systems Mitchell typically used, at times consistent with his work schedule, creating a baseline that would make the eventual intrusion appear routine. This suggests long-term planning, she observed. Someone was preparing this attack for weeks, possibly months. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Park, the team's malware specialist, joined the discussion. We found traces of a custom rootkit in Mitchell's assigned systems. The code was designed to capture credentials and maintain persistent access while remaining undetectable by our standard monitoring tools. The rootkit's source code revealed military-grade sophistication. It exploited previously unknown vulnerabilities in the base's network management software, vulnerabilities that required intimate knowledge of specific configurations used only at Fort Brennan. This wasn't software downloaded from the dark web. Someone had crafted it specifically for this target. Rachel requested access to the base's personnel database and began cross-referencing individuals with the technical knowledge required to create such specialized malware. The list was disturbingly short. Only 12 people on the base possessed both the security clearance and technical expertise necessary for this type of operation. We've already investigated all personnel with relevant access, Rodriguez said, anticipating her question. Everyone accounted for their whereabouts during the breach timeframe, and none showed signs of suspicious behavior. What about former personnel? Rachel asked. Someone who previously had access but might harbor grievances. Valdez pulled up termination records for the past 2 years. 17 people left the cybersecurity division during that period. Most were routine transfers or retirements, but 3 departures involved disciplinary actions. The disciplinary cases painted a concerning picture. Specialist David Chen had been transferred after repeatedly violating security protocols during penetration testing exercises. Staff Sergeant Angela Brooks left the Army entirely after being caught selling sensitive technical manuals online. Most interesting was Warrant Officer Thomas Garrett, who had been reassigned following allegations of unauthorized system access during a joint exercise. Circumstances remarkably similar to Rachel's own downfall. "Where is Garrett now?" she asked. "Reassigned to Fort Campbell's logistics division," Park replied. "Similar to your situation, actually. High-level technical skills relegated to administrative duties." Rachel felt a chill of recognition. The attack pattern suddenly made sense. This wasn't random cybercrime or foreign espionage. Someone with intimate knowledge of military cybersecurity was demonstrating exactly how vulnerable their systems remained despite extensive security measures. She pulled up Garrett's personnel file and began analyzing his background. 23 years of military service with specializations in network penetration testing and digital forensics. His record showed consistent excellence until the joint exercise, where he had exceeded his authorized access scope while attempting to demonstrate security vulnerabilities. "Contact Fort Campbell and verify Garrett's current status," Rachel instructed. "I want to know his exact whereabouts during the past 72 hours. While Valdez made the inquiry, Rachel dove deeper into the attack methodology. The intruder had accessed personnel files for specific individuals, all high-ranking officers involved in cybersecurity oversight. They had downloaded deployment schedules for upcoming exercises and classified briefings on foreign threat assessments. But they hadn't attempted to exfiltrate the data or cause permanent damage. The selective nature of the breach suggested demonstration rather than espionage. Someone was proving a point about systemic vulnerabilities, much like Rachel's own actions in Estonia. The parallel was uncomfortable but undeniable. Fort Campbell confirms Garrett reported for duty yesterday morning, Valdez announced. But there's a complication. He requested emergency leave 3 days ago, citing a family medical situation. His current location is unknown. Rachel's suspicions crystallized into certainty. The timeline matched perfectly. Garrett's leave request coincided with the beginning of the credential compromise phase. He had the technical skills, intimate system knowledge, and personal motivation to orchestrate this type of demonstration. "We need to trace his digital footprints," she said. "Check flight records, credit card transactions, hotel reservations, anything that might indicate his current location." Rodriguez began coordinating with military police investigators, while Rachel continued analyzing the attack vector. The rootkit's code contains subtle signatures that might reveal its author. Programming style is like a fingerprint. Experienced developers leave distinctive patterns in their work. As she examined the malware's architecture, Rachel noticed something peculiar. The code included comments written in a style she recognized. Terse, functional descriptions that prioritized clarity over convention. She had seen this approach before during joint training exercises, where different units collaborated on cybersecurity projects. "Pull up code samples from Garrett's previous projects," she requested. "I want to compare programming styles." Park accessed archived files from Garrett's tenure in the cybersecurity division. The comparison was illuminating. Identical commenting conventions, similar variable naming patterns, and matching approaches to error handling. The evidence was circumstantial, but compelling. "This is definitely Garrett's work," Rachel concluded. "But we still need to determine his current location and capabilities." The investigation took an unexpected turn when Valdez discovered unusual network activity from a public library in Clarksville, Tennessee, just 30 minutes from Fort Campbell. Someone had used library computers to access various online services during the past 2 days, creating accounts and establishing digital infrastructure. "The timing matches," Valdez observed, "and Clarksville would be a logical staging area for someone operating from Fort Campbell." Rachel studied the library's network logs, which the FBI had obtained through emergency legal channels. The user had created anonymous email accounts, purchased virtual private network services, and established accounts on several cloud computing platforms. They were building a distributed infrastructure that could support extended cyber operations. "He's not finished," Rachel realized. This initial breach was just the beginning. Garrett is preparing for something much larger. The implications sent shockwaves through the operations center. If Garrett possessed the technical skills to breach Fort Brennan's secure networks, he likely had similar capabilities against other military installations. The scope of potential damage was staggering. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes arrived as the team was briefing senior leadership via secure video conference. Her expression was grim as she reviewed their findings. "The Pentagon wants this resolved immediately," she announced. "Garrett's security clearance has been revoked and military police have issued an arrest warrant. But our primary concern is determining the extent of his access to other military networks." Rachel proposed a controversial solution. "We could attempt to trace his activities in real time by monitoring the infrastructure he's established. If he continues his operations, we might be able to track his location and intercept his communications. That would require us to conduct surveillance of civilian infrastructure," Hayes pointed out. "Legal and jurisdictional issues could complicate the investigation." "With respect, ma'am, those complications become irrelevant if Garrett compromises additional military networks. The security implications outweigh procedural concerns." Hayes considered the proposal while consulting with legal advisors via secure communication. The debate continued for 20 minutes before she reached a decision. "Approved, but with strict parameters. You have authorization for passive monitoring only, no active measures against civilian systems, and everything must be coordinated with appropriate federal agencies." Rachel felt the familiar excitement of a high-stakes cyber investigation. This was the kind of work she had trained for, the intersection of technical expertise and national security where every decision carried significant consequences. As the team prepared their monitoring systems, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that Garrett was anticipating their response. Someone with his background would expect military authorities to eventually identify him as the primary suspect. The real question was whether he intended to be caught or if this was all part of a larger plan. The next few hours would determine whether Fort Brennan's cybersecurity division could prevent a potentially devastating attack on military networks across multiple installations. Rachel had been given the chance to prove her value, but the stakes were higher than her personal redemption. Somewhere in Tennessee, Thomas Garrett was preparing his next move in what appeared to be an elaborate game of digital warfare. The question wasn't whether he would strike again, it was whether they could stop him before he demonstrated just how vulnerable America's military networks really were. The digital surveillance operation commenced at 1800 hours, with Rachel coordinating a multi-agency effort from Fort Brennan's Secure Operations Center. FBI cyber specialists had established monitoring points across Tennessee's telecommunications infrastructure, while NSA liaisons provided real-time intelligence on Garrett's digital activities. The complexity rivaled major counterterrorism operations. Special Agent Diana Foster from the FBI's Memphis field office joined the task force via encrypted video link. Foster's reputation for tracking sophisticated cybercriminals had earned her assignment to the most sensitive digital investigations, and her presence indicated how seriously federal authorities viewed the threat. Our technical teams have identified 17 different IP addresses associated with accounts Garrett established over the past 48 hours, Foster reported. He's using a rotating proxy network that spans 6 states, making real-time location tracking extremely difficult. Rachel studied the network topology Foster's team had mapped. Garrett's digital infrastructure resembled something a nation-state actor might deploy: redundant communication channels, geographically distributed resources, and multiple layers of anonymization. The sophistication suggested months of preparation, not a spontaneous act of revenge. "This isn't just about demonstrating vulnerabilities," she told the assembled team. "Garrett is establishing persistent access to military networks for extended operations. He's building capability for sustained cyber warfare." Sergeant First Class Carlos Rivera, Fort Brennan's communications security officer, raised a disturbing possibility. If he's targeting multiple installations simultaneously, he might be coordinating with external actors. Foreign intelligence services would pay handsomely for someone with his access and expertise. The suggestion sent ripples of concern through the operations center. Espionage was a far more serious charge than unauthorized network access, carrying implications that extend well beyond Garrett's personal grievances. If foreign actors were involved, the compromise could affect national security at the highest levels. Rachel requested access to international telecommunications monitoring systems, a capability that required approval from military intelligence headquarters. While waiting for authorization, she focused on analyzing Garrett's operational patterns for exploitable weaknesses. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Specialist Lisa Chen, the youngest member of the cybersecurity team, noticed anomalous traffic patterns in the base's environmental control systems. Someone had accessed heating, ventilation, and air conditioning networks, infrastructure typically ignored during security assessments. Why would Garrett care about HVA systems? Chen wondered aloud. Rachel immediately grasped the implications. Environmental controls were connected to the same network infrastructure as critical systems, but rarely monitored by cybersecurity teams. They represented a perfect backdoor for maintaining persistent access without detection. He's not just targeting classified data, Rachel realized. Garrett is positioning himself to physically compromise our facilities. HVA systems control everything from server room temperatures to air filtration in chemical storage areas. The revelation transformed their understanding of Garrett's intentions. Physical sabotage combined with cyber attacks could cripple military operations far more effectively than data theft alone. If he could manipulate environmental systems during critical operations, the resulting chaos might provide cover for more devastating strikes. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes immediately ordered comprehensive security sweeps of all environmental control systems across Fort Brennan. The investigation uncovered evidence of unauthorized modifications to temperature sensors, air filtration controls, and emergency shutdown protocols. Garrett had been preparing multiple attack vectors simultaneously. Estimate time to completion if he continues current operations, Hayes demanded. Rodriguez consulted with the technical team before responding. Based on his preparation timeline, Garrett could execute a coordinated attack within the next 12 to 18 hours. He's established enough infrastructure to simultaneously target systems across multiple installations. The compressed timeline forced immediate tactical decisions. Military police units were dispatched to likely staging areas in Tennessee, while cyber warfare specialists prepared defensive measures for potential target installations. Rachel found herself at the center of a rapidly expanding operation that now involved hundreds of personnel. Special Agent Foster's team reported new developments from their surveillance operations. Garrett made contact with someone in Eastern Europe approximately 3 hours ago using encrypted messaging applications. We couldn't intercept the content, but traffic analysis suggests coordination of timing and resources. The foreign connection confirmed everyone's worst fears. Garrett wasn't acting alone. He had established relationships with actors who possessed complementary capabilities and shared interests in compromising American military networks. The investigation had evolved from tracking a rogue soldier to preventing coordinated cyber warfare. Rachel proposed an aggressive counterstrike strategy. Instead of purely defensive measures, we could use Garrett's own infrastructure against him. If we can identify his command and control systems, we might be able to feed him false information or disrupt his communications. The proposal generated intense debate among the assembled leadership. Active cyber operations against targets within American territory raised complex legal questions, while operations against foreign actors required coordination with intelligence agencies. The bureaucratic complications threatened to paralyze their response. "Ma'am, we don't have time for extended policy discussions," Rachel argued. Garrett chose this timeline precisely because he knows military bureaucracy moves slowly. While we debate procedures, he's finalizing preparations for attacks that could compromise national security. Hayes weighed the risks against the potential consequences of inaction. Approved for preparation only. You have authorization to develop offensive capabilities, but execution requires explicit approval from Pentagon leadership. Rachel immediately began crafting digital weapons designed to exploit vulnerabilities in Garrett's own network infrastructure. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was using the same techniques that had landed her in administrative exile, but now with official sanction and urgent necessity. The malware she developed targeted the specific proxy services and anonymous communication tools Garrett employed. Rather than destroying his infrastructure, her approach aimed to provide surveillance access and disrupt his operational timeline. If executed properly, Garrett would find his own tools working against him. As Rachel refined her cyber weapons, Specialist Chen made another crucial discovery. Environmental system logs revealed that Garrett had tested his access to Fort Brennan's infrastructure just 6 hours earlier. He had briefly activated emergency ventilation protocols in Building 47, the same administrative facility where Rachel had been exiled. "This is personal," she concluded. "Garrett isn't just targeting military networks randomly. He's specifically going after the command structure that relegated both of us to administrative duties." The realization provided insight into Garrett's psychological motivations and potential targets. If his primary grievance focused on career-destroying punishment for unauthorized cyber activities, he would likely target the specific officers responsible for those decisions. That narrowed the potential victim pool significantly. Rachel cross-referenced personnel involved in disciplinary actions against both herself and Garrett. The overlap was disturbing. Colonel Webb, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, and several other senior officers had participated in decisions affecting both cases. Garrett's target list probably mirrored her own chain of command. We need immediate security details for all officers involved in our respective disciplinary proceedings, she recommended. If Garrett can manipulate environmental systems, he might attempt physical harm rather than just data compromise. Hayes coordinated protective measures while Rachel continued developing offensive cyber capabilities. The dual approach, defensive protection and offensive counterstrike, represented the military's evolving approach to cyber warfare. Traditional defensive measures alone were insufficient against sophisticated adversaries. The Operations Center received an urgent intelligence update at 21:30 hours. NSA monitoring stations had detected increased activity on networks associated with known foreign intelligence services. Multiple nation-state actors were positioning themselves to exploit whatever chaos Garrett's operations might create. This has escalated beyond a single rogue soldier, Foster observed grimly. Foreign actors are treating this as an opportunity to gather intelligence on American military cybersecurity capabilities. Garrett may be providing them with a window into our defensive measures. The international implications transformed the mission's scope and urgency. What had begun as an internal security breach now threatened to expose military secrets to hostile foreign powers. The stakes extended far beyond Fort Brennan's local networks. Rachel finalized her offensive malware package and prepared deployment procedures. The weapons were designed to activate automatically when Garrett attempted his next major operation, providing real-time intelligence on his activities while disrupting his communications with foreign handlers. Deployment requires manual activation from this terminal, she briefed the command team. Once initiated, we'll have approximately 30 minutes of enhanced surveillance capability before Garrett's security measures adapt to our intrusion. The timing would be critical. Too early, and Garrett might detect the countermeasures and modify his plans. Too late, and his attack might succeed before they can gather actionable intelligence. Rachel would need to judge the optimal moment based on real-time assessment of his activities. As midnight approached, monitoring systems detected a surge in encrypted communications between Garrett's infrastructure and multiple foreign endpoints. Traffic analysis suggested coordination of final preparations for an imminent operation. The moment of truth was approaching. All stations, this is command, Hayes announced over secure communications. Prepare for immediate implementation of counterstrike protocols. Martinez, you have authorization to deploy offensive measures at your discretion. Rachel's finger hovered over the activation control as streams of data flowed across her monitors. Somewhere in Tennessee, Thomas Garrett was preparing to demonstrate just how vulnerable America's military networks really were. The question was whether her counterstrike would stop him or simply provide him with additional intelligence about military cybersecurity capabilities. The digital battlefield was about to claim its newest casualties, and Rachel Martinez found herself at the epicenter of a conflict that would determine the future of military cybersecurity. Her months of administrative exile had led to this moment, a chance to prevent catastrophic damage while proving that her unorthodox methods served legitimate purposes. The next few hours would either vindicate her approach or confirm her superior's worst fears about the dangers of giving technical specialists too much autonomy. In the world of cyber warfare, the line between heroism and treason often depended entirely on the outcome. At 01:27 hours, Rachel's monitoring systems erupted with alerts as Garrett's network infrastructure suddenly came alive. Encrypted data streams flowed between dozens of compromised systems across 7 military installations, while foreign intelligence servers established secure tunnels to receive whatever intelligence Garrett was preparing to extract.
He's initiating simultaneous penetration attempts, Sergeant Rodriguez announced from his monitoring station. Fort Knox, Fort Hood, Norfolk Naval Base, and 4 others are showing unauthorized access attempts using credentials we haven't seen before. Rachel's pulse quickened as she analyzed the attack patterns flooding her screens. Garrett wasn't just targeting Fort Brennan, he was orchestrating a coordinated assault on America's most critical military installations. The scope exceeded anything they had anticipated, transforming a single security breach into potential national catastrophe. "Deploy the counter-strike package immediately," Lieutenant Colonel Hayes ordered. Rachel's finger struck the activation key, launching her carefully crafted malware into Garrett's network infrastructure. Within seconds, her surveillance tools began reporting back from inside his command systems, revealing the true magnitude of his operation. The intelligence was staggering. Garrett had spent 8 months infiltrating military networks, establishing persistent backdoors in systems across 12 installations. His foreign contacts had provided advanced exploitation tools in exchange for intelligence on American cybersecurity capabilities. Tonight's operation was designed to simultaneously extract classified data while demonstrating the complete vulnerability of military digital infrastructure. "Jesus Christ," Technical Sergeant Valdez whispered as data streamed across her monitors. "He's got access to nuclear submarine deployment schedules, special operations personnel files, and classified research on next-generation weapon systems." The implications sent shockwaves through the operations center. If Garrett successfully extracted and transmitted this intelligence to foreign handlers, the damage to national security would be incalculable. Submarine positions could be compromised, covert operators exposed, and cutting-edge military technology reverse-engineered by hostile nations. Rachel dove deeper into Garrett's command systems, using her surveillance access to map his complete operational structure. What she discovered defied comprehension. Garrett had established himself as the centerpiece of an international intelligence operation that dwarfed most nation-state cyber programs. He's not working for foreign governments, she realized. He's selling intelligence to the highest bidders from multiple countries simultaneously. Russians, Chinese, Iranians, anyone willing to pay for American military secrets. The mercenary aspect made Garrett exponentially more dangerous. Unlike ideologically motivated spies, he had no loyalty to any particular foreign power. His only constraint was maximizing profit, which meant he would sell intelligence to every bidder, regardless of geopolitical consequences. Special Agent Foster's voice crackled through secure communications from FBI headquarters. "We've identified 3 different foreign intelligence services attempting to establish secure communication channels with Garrett's infrastructure. This isn't espionage, it's an intelligence auction." Rachel's counter-strike malware continued infiltrating Garrett's systems, but his security measures were adapting faster than anticipated. Advanced artificial intelligence algorithms were detecting and isolating her intrusion attempts, forcing her to constantly modify her approach. "He's using machine learning defense systems," she reported grimly. "Every technique we deploy gets analyzed and countered within minutes. We're in an arms race against automated security that's learning from our attacks in real time." The technological sophistication suggested resources far beyond what a single rogue soldier could acquire independently. Garrett's foreign benefactors had provided him with cutting-edge cyber warfare tools that rival capabilities possessed by only the most advanced military units. Specialist Chen identified a critical vulnerability in Garrett's adaptive defenses. AI systems are prioritizing protection of data extraction processes over communication security. If we target his command channels instead of his intelligence gathering, we might disrupt coordination with foreign handlers. Rachel immediately shifted tactics, directing her malware to attack his communication infrastructure rather than his data theft operations. The approach yielded immediate results. Encrypted channels to foreign servers began experiencing severe disruptions as her counter-strike tools flooded communication nodes with garbage data. "Target communications are degrading rapidly," Rodriguez reported. "Foreign intelligence servers are losing contact with Garrett's systems." But the communication disruption came with an unintended consequence. Cut off from his foreign handlers, Garrett accelerated his timeline dramatically. Instead of methodically extracting intelligence over several hours, he began rapidly downloading massive data archives from every compromised system. "He's panic downloading everything he can access," Valdez observed with alarm. "If he completes these transfers, he'll have terabytes of classified intelligence stored locally." The race was now against time and bandwidth. Rachel's team needed to completely shut down Garrett's access before he finishes downloading intelligence that could compromise American military operations worldwide. Every passing minute represented potential catastrophic damage to national security. Rachel made a desperate decision that violated every cybersecurity protocol she had ever learned. Instead of gradually infiltrating Garrett's systems, she launched a massive coordinated attack using every available resource simultaneously. The approach risked detection and counterstrike, but gradual measures were insufficient given the compressed timeline. Deploying a full offensive package, she announced, all monitoring, all malware, all counterstrike capabilities simultaneously. Her assault overwhelmed Garrett's adaptive defenses through sheer volume. Dozens of different attack vectors struck his infrastructure simultaneously, creating more threats than his artificial intelligence systems could analyze and counter effectively. For the first time since the operation began, Rachel gained decisive advantage. The breakthrough provided access to Garrett's central command systems, revealing the physical location of his primary operations center. He was broadcasting from an abandoned telecommunications facility outside Nashville, using commercial internet infrastructure to mask his activities among legitimate traffic. GPS coordinates locked, she reported. FBI tactical teams can have him in custody within 40 minutes.
But 40 minutes might be too late. Garrett's download operations were already 60% complete, with the most sensitive intelligence scheduled for extraction during the final phase. Even if they captured him physically, the damage might already be irreversible. Rachel made another command decision that would either save the operation or destroy her career permanently. She began actively sabotaging the military networks Garrett was attacking, deliberately disrupting systems to prevent intelligence extraction. "Martinez, what the hell are you doing?" Hayes demanded as monitoring stations reported widespread system failures across multiple installations. "Preventing catastrophic intelligence loss," Rachel replied without looking up from her console. "Better temporary disruption of our own systems than permanent compromise of national security." Her approach was working. By systematically overloading network infrastructure that Garrett was exploiting, she prevented completion of his download operations. But the collateral damage was extensive. Military communications, logistics systems, and operational networks experienced cascading failures as she prioritized security over functionality. The command center erupted in controlled chaos as senior officers coordinated damage assessment while Rachel continued her digital scorched earth campaign. She was simultaneously saving and destroying military cyber capabilities, walking a razor's edge between heroism and treason. FBI tactical units report visual contact with target location, Foster announced. They're observing significant electronic equipment and multiple communication antennas, preparing for immediate assault. Rachel's surveillance tools provided real-time intelligence from inside Garrett's facility. He was alone, working frantically to complete download extraction before authorities arrived. His screen showed download progress bars racing toward completion while her counterstrike tools systematically destroyed his communication channels. "He's got maybe 10 minutes of useful bandwidth remaining," she reported. "After that, his connection degrades below functional thresholds for large data transfers." The tactical assault commenced at 02:03 hours, with FBI agents breaching multiple entry points simultaneously. Rachel watched through compromised security cameras as armed teams swept through the facility while Garrett attempted to complete his final downloads. But Garrett had prepared for physical capture. As FBI agents reached his operations center, automated systems began executing data destruction protocols designed to eliminate evidence of his activities. Hard drives started overwriting themselves while network connections severed automatically. "He's purging everything," Rachel announced with frustration. "We're losing intelligence on his complete operational network." In a final act of desperation, Rachel attempted to extract intelligence from Garrett's systems faster than his destruction protocols could eliminate it. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she raced against automated deletion processes, trying to preserve evidence of foreign involvement and compromised systems. The digital battle lasted exactly 47 seconds. When the smoke cleared, Rachel had managed to preserve partial intelligence on Garrett's foreign contacts and operational methods, but much of the evidence was permanently destroyed.
The forensic value was limited, but sufficient to begin unraveling his international network. Target in custody, Foster reported as FBI agents secured the facility. The subject offered no resistance and is cooperating with preliminary questioning. Rachel leaned back in her chair, exhausted by the intensity of the cyber warfare engagement. Around her, the operations center gradually returned to normal as system administrators began restoring networks she had deliberately disrupted. The immediate crisis was over, but the long-term implications were just beginning to emerge. Colonel Webb arrived at the operations center as dawn broke over Fort Brennan. His expression mixed relief with concern as he reviewed preliminary after-action reports. The operation had prevented catastrophic intelligence loss, but at the cost of widespread system disruptions and potential exposure of American cyber warfare capabilities. Staff Sergeant Martinez, Webb said formally, your actions tonight prevented what could have been the worst intelligence breach in military history, but your methods raised serious questions about operational boundaries and authorized procedures. Rachel stood at attention, uncertain whether she was about to be commended or court-martialed. Sir, the situation required immediate action beyond conventional protocols. I believed the security implications justified extraordinary measures. Webb studied her for a long moment before responding. Your assessment was correct, and your technical execution was exceptional. But your willingness to damage our own systems to prevent enemy access demonstrates the same disregard for authority that landed you in administrative exile. The parallel to her Estonia incident was unmistakable. Once again, Rachel had achieved mission success through methods that violated established procedures. The pattern suggested either exceptional judgment or dangerous insubordination, depending on perspective. However, Webb continued, the Pentagon has reviewed your actions and concluded that your approach was necessary given the unique circumstances. You're being recommended for commendation and immediate reassignment to a position commensurate with your capabilities. Rachel felt a mixture of vindication and uncertainty. Her administrative exile was ending, but the events of the past 24 hours had demonstrated that her unorthodox methods remained her greatest asset and most dangerous liability. As the sun rose over Fort Brennan, Rachel Martinez prepared to resume her career in military cybersecurity, armed with hard-won knowledge about the evolving nature of digital warfare and her own place within it. 3 weeks after Thomas Garrett's arrest, Rachel Martinez found herself in the most unlikely place imaginable, the Pentagon's Cyber Command briefing room, surrounded by generals, admirals, and intelligence officials whose names appeared in classified organizational charts. The mahogany conference table reflected overhead lighting as she prepared to brief the highest levels of military leadership on lessons learned from the Garrett incident. General Patricia Morrison, commander of U.S. Cyber Command, opened the session with a question that cut straight to the heart of military cybersecurity doctrine. Staff Sergeant Martinez, your after-action report suggests that our current defensive strategies are fundamentally inadequate against insider threats. Explain. Rachel had spent weeks analyzing every aspect of Garrett's operation, building a comprehensive assessment that challenged decades of established cybersecurity thinking. Her findings would reshape how the military approached digital warfare, but delivering that message to 4-star generals required diplomatic precision.
Ma'am, traditional cybersecurity assumes external adversaries attempting to breach our networks from outside, she began. But Garrett's operation demonstrated that our most dangerous enemies already possess legitimate access credentials and intimate knowledge of our defensive measures. The distinction was crucial. External hackers faced the challenge of identifying vulnerabilities and exploiting them from outside the network perimeter. Insider threats like Garrett bypass those barriers entirely, operating from within systems while appearing to conduct legitimate activities. Admiral Robert Chen, Director of Naval Intelligence, leaned forward with obvious concern. Are you suggesting that our security clearance process is fundamentally flawed? Not flawed, sir, but insufficient for current threat environments, Rachel replied carefully. Security clearances evaluate past behavior and psychological profiles, but they can't predict future reactions to career disappointments or financial pressures. Garrett held a top-secret clearance for 15 years before deciding to monetize his access. The implications rippled through the assembled leadership.
If security clearances couldn't reliably identify potential insider threats, the entire military intelligence apparatus faced unprecedented vulnerability. Thousands of personnel possessed access to classified systems, and any one of them could potentially replicate Garrett's betrayal. General Morrison requested specific recommendations for addressing these vulnerabilities. Rachel pulled up her detailed analysis, prepared for exactly this question. We need to implement continuous behavioral monitoring using artificial intelligence systems that analyze network usage patterns, communication behaviors, and access requests, she explained. The goal isn't to spy on our own personnel, but to identify anomalous activities that might indicate compromised individuals or unauthorized access. The proposal generated immediate pushback from multiple directions. Civil liberties concerns, implementation costs, and technical challenges created a complex web of obstacles that would require careful navigation. Colonel Sarah Williams from the Army's Legal Division raised the most significant objection. Continuous monitoring of military personnel raises serious constitutional questions about privacy expectations and potential abuse of surveillance capabilities. Rachel had anticipated this concern and prepared a nuanced response. "Ma'am, we're already monitoring network activities for security purposes. The enhancement involves using advanced analytics to identify patterns that human analysts might miss, not expanding the scope of data collection." The distinction mattered legally and practically. Military personnel already accepted extensive monitoring as a condition of security clearance, but automated analysis systems could identify subtle behavioral changes that traditional oversight missed. Deputy Director James Patterson from the CIA contributed an intelligence perspective to the discussion. Foreign intelligence services are actively recruiting disgruntled military personnel with cybersecurity expertise. Garrett's case isn't isolated. We've identified at least 6 similar operations targeting different service branches over the past 2 years. The revelation stunned even the senior leadership present. If multiple Garrett-like operations were underway simultaneously, the scope of potential damage exceeded their worst-case scenarios. Foreign adversaries had apparently identified insider recruitment as a highly effective attack vector against American military networks. Rachel seized the opportunity to emphasize her most critical recommendation. This reinforces why we need proactive countermeasures rather than reactive investigations. By the time we identify insider threats through traditional methods, the damage is already irreversible. General Morrison called for a brief recess to allow private consultation among the senior leadership. Rachel waited in an adjacent conference room, reviewing her notes while wondering whether her recommendations would be implemented or dismissed as too radical for military bureaucracy. When the session resumed, the atmosphere had shifted noticeably. General Morrison's expression indicated that significant decisions had been reached during the private discussion. Staff Sergeant Martinez, based on your analysis and recent intelligence assessments, Cyber Command is authorizing development of an advanced insider threat detection program, she announced. You're being assigned as the technical lead for this initiative, with promotion to warrant officer and transfer to a specialized unit at Fort Gordon. The career trajectory was unprecedented. In 3 weeks, Rachel had gone from administrative exile to leading a Pentagon-level cybersecurity initiative. But the responsibility came with enormous pressure. Failure would compromise national security, while success might fundamentally change how the military approached personnel security. General Morrison provided additional context for the urgency driving this initiative. Intelligence communities assess with high confidence that foreign adversaries are preparing large-scale cyber attacks against military infrastructure. Garrett's operation may have been a proof of concept for more devastating strikes. The strategic picture was becoming clearer. Garrett's betrayal wasn't just criminal, it was reconnaissance for potential warfare scenarios where insider threats could cripple American military capabilities during critical operations. Foreign adversaries were apparently planning to exploit personnel vulnerabilities rather than technical weaknesses. Deputy Director Patterson outlined the international dimensions of the threat.
We've identified recruitment operations targeting military cybersecurity personnel in 7 allied nations. This appears to be a coordinated campaign to develop human intelligence assets within NATO cyber commands. Rachel absorbed the implications as she prepared to transition from investigating a single insider threat to preventing an entire category of attacks. The scope required rethinking fundamental assumptions about personnel security, network architecture, and operational procedures. What authority will my team have to implement monitoring systems across existing military networks? She asked. General Morrison consulted with legal advisors before responding. Full implementation authority for all Department of Defense networks with coordination requirements for intelligence agency systems. Your recommendations will carry the weight of Cyber Command directives.
The level of authority was extraordinary for someone who had been filing invoices just a month earlier. Rachel would essentially be redesigning cybersecurity for the entire American military with direct impact on operations worldwide. Colonel Williams provided legal guidance for the expanded monitoring capabilities. Your team will operate under special authorities that permit behavioral analysis while maintaining constitutional protections. But those authorities come with strict oversight requirements and regular legal reviews. Rachel understood the delicate balance required. Effective insider threat detection demanded extensive monitoring capabilities. But excessive surveillance could create the very authoritarian environment that drove personnel toward betrayal in the first place. As the briefing concluded, General Morrison pulled Rachel aside for a private conversation that would define her future role within military cybersecurity. Warrant Officer Martinez, she said, using Rachel's new rank for the first time. The Garrett incident exposed vulnerabilities that threaten our national security at the most fundamental level. Your technical skills prevented a catastrophe, but now we need you to prevent the next 1,000 potential catastrophes. The responsibility was sobering. Rachel would be tasked with identifying potential traitors among her own colleagues, implementing surveillance systems that balance security with privacy, and developing countermeasures against threats that evolved faster than traditional military bureaucracy could respond. "I understand the magnitude of the assignment, ma'am," Rachel replied, "but I want to ensure my team has the autonomy to implement solutions that may challenge conventional procedures." General Morrison smiled knowingly. "Your willingness to challenge conventional procedures is exactly why you're being given this assignment. The Garrett incident proved that conventional approaches are insufficient for current threat environments." The conversation represented a fundamental shift in military cybersecurity philosophy. Instead of punishing personnel who exceeded authorized boundaries, leadership was now recognizing that unconventional threats required unconventional responses. Rachel departed the Pentagon with classified briefing materials, security clearances she had never imagined possessing, and responsibility for protecting American military networks against the most sophisticated insider threats in history. Her administrative exile had ended, not with rehabilitation, but with recognition that her unorthodox methods were exactly what the military needed. The drive back to Fort Brennan provided time to process the dramatic changes in her career trajectory. 6 months earlier, she had been disciplined for unauthorized network access during joint exercises. Now she was being tasked with implementing unprecedented monitoring capabilities across all military networks. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Technical Sergeant Valdez. "Saw the Pentagon announcement about your promotion and new assignment. Well deserved, ma'am. The team is proud to have worked with you." Similar messages arrived throughout the day from colleagues who had supported her during the Garrett investigation. The recognition felt validating after months of questioning whether her career would recover from the Estonia incident. But Rachel also received a message that gave her pause. Former specialist David Chen, one of the individuals they had investigated as potential Garrett accomplices, sent a simple note. "Congratulations on your promotion. Looking forward to working under your new monitoring systems." The message carried an undertone that Rachel couldn't quite interpret. Was Chen expressing genuine support, or was there something more complex in his response? The ambiguity reminded her that implementing insider threat detection would require analyzing communications from personnel who might view such systems as violations of trust rather than necessary security measures. As Rachel prepared for her transition to Fort Gordon and the challenges of building a revolutionary cybersecurity program, she reflected on the path that had brought her to this point. Her willingness to challenge authority had nearly destroyed her career, but it had also positioned her to address threats that conventional military thinking couldn't comprehend. The next phase would determine whether her unconventional methods could be systematized and scaled across the entire military, or whether the very traits that made her effective as an individual operator would prove incompatible with institutional leadership responsibilities. Either way, Rachel Martinez was about to discover whether the military was truly ready to embrace the kind of radical changes necessary to defend against 21st-century cyber warfare. 6 months later, Warrant Officer Rachel Martinez stood in the secure laboratory at Fort Gordon, Georgia, watching as her revolutionary insider threat detection system processed behavioral data from over 200,000 military personnel. The AI algorithms she had designed were learning patterns, identifying anomalies, and flagging potential security risks with unprecedented accuracy. But they were also revealing uncomfortable truths about military culture that no one had anticipated. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the behavioral psychologist recruited from Stanford to help interpret the system's findings, gestured toward a wall-mounted display showing real-time analytics. "Rachel, we have a problem. The system is identifying concerning behavioral patterns in over 8% of personnel with security clearances." The percentage was staggering. If accurate, it suggested that thousands of military personnel exhibited behaviors consistent with potential insider threats. But Rachel had learned to be cautious about raw statistics without proper context. "Define concerning behavioral patterns," she requested while pulling up detailed analysis reports. "Increased after-hours network access, unusual communications with external contacts, accessing systems outside normal duty requirements, and elevated stress indicators in routine communications," Dr. Vasquez explained. "The algorithms classify these as risk factors based on comparison with known cases like Garrett." Rachel studied the data more carefully, immediately recognizing a fundamental flaw in their analytical approach. The system was designed to identify deviation from established norms, but it wasn't accounting for legitimate reasons why personnel might exhibit unusual behaviors. "We're seeing false positives," she concluded. "The system is flagging people who are working extra hours on legitimate projects, communicating with family members deployed overseas, cross-training in different specialties, or dealing with personal stress that has nothing to do with security risks." The revelation highlighted a critical challenge in developing automated insider threat detection. Human behavior was too complex to be reduced to simple algorithmic analysis, especially in military environments where personnel routinely dealt with extraordinary stress and unconventional assignments.
Chief Warrant Officer Marcus Thompson, Rachel's newly assigned deputy with extensive experience in counterintelligence operations, raised an additional concern. "We're also seeing patterns that suggest the system itself is changing behavior. Personnel are modifying their activities to avoid triggering automated flags, which could make genuine threats harder to identify." The unintended consequence was troubling but predictable. As word spread about behavioral monitoring systems, personnel began self-censoring their digital activities to avoid unwanted scrutiny. The resulting behavioral modifications could actually make insider threats more difficult to detect by eliminating baseline patterns for comparison. Rachel called an emergency review session with the full development team to address these complications before they undermined the entire program. The conference room is filled with cybersecurity specialists, behavioral analysts, legal advisors, and military liaisons representing every service branch. Captain Jessica Liu from the Air Force's Cybersecurity Division presented troubling feedback from her installations. "Our personnel are reporting decreased morale and increased suspicion among colleagues. People are afraid to collaborate or share information because they worry about triggering security alerts." The cultural impact threatened to destroy the very trust and cooperation that effective military operations required. If insider threat detection systems created an atmosphere of paranoia and surveillance, they might cause more damage than the threats they were designed to prevent.
Rachel knew they needed to fundamentally recalibrate their approach. Pure algorithmic analysis was insufficient. The system required human judgment and contextual understanding to distinguish between genuine security risks and normal behavioral variation. We need to implement human-in-the-loop verification for all algorithmic flags, she announced. No automated system should make security determinations without trained analysts reviewing the context and circumstances. The modification would significantly slow their response times and increase operational costs, but it was necessary to maintain both effectiveness and personnel trust. Rachel was learning that designing cybersecurity systems for human organizations required as much attention to psychology as technology. Dr. Vasquez proposed an additional enhancement based on her analysis of false positive patterns. We should develop personalized behavioral baselines for each individual rather than comparing everyone to general population norms. People have unique communication styles, work patterns, and stress responses that should be accounted for. The personalization approach would require massive computational resources and months of data collection to establish reliable baselines, but it promised to dramatically reduce false positives while improving detection accuracy for genuine threats. As the team worked to refine their algorithms, Rachel received an urgent classified briefing that would test their enhanced system in real-world conditions. Army intelligence had identified suspicious activities by Master Sergeant Kevin Rodriguez, a cybersecurity specialist at Fort Cavazos who exhibited several concerning behavioral patterns. Rodriguez had been accessing classified systems during off-duty hours, communicating with individuals in Eastern Europe through encrypted messaging applications, and making unusual financial transactions that suggested possible foreign compensation. The combination of factors triggered multiple algorithmic flags that demanded immediate investigation. This could be our first genuine insider threat detection using the new system, Chief Thompson observed as they reviewed Rodriguez's behavioral profile. If we handle this correctly, it validates our entire approach. If we're wrong, it could destroy the career of an innocent soldier. The stakes were enormous. False accusations would undermine trust in the system and potentially violate the civil rights of military personnel. But failing to identify genuine threats could result in catastrophic security breaches similar to Garrett's operation. Rachel decided to personally oversee the investigation, applying lessons learned from the Garrett case while testing the enhanced analytical capabilities her team had developed. The first step involved detailed examination of Rodriguez's network activities to distinguish between suspicious behavior and legitimate explanations. The initial analysis revealed concerning patterns. Rodriguez had accessed personnel files for individuals he had no professional reason to investigate, downloaded technical documentation outside his area of responsibility, and established encrypted communication channels with foreign contacts who appeared to have intelligence backgrounds. But Rachel also discovered potential innocent explanations for each suspicious activity. Rodriguez was pursuing a graduate degree in cybersecurity that required research into various military systems. His foreign contacts included former military colleagues now working in private security companies overseas. His unusual financial transactions involved cryptocurrency investments that were perfectly legal. "We need more evidence before making any accusations," she told the investigation team. "Circumstantial behavioral patterns aren't sufficient to justify security actions against Rodriguez." The decision to continue surveillance rather than immediate confrontation reflected Rachel's understanding that insider threat detection required patience and thorough analysis rather than rapid response to algorithmic alerts. Hasty actions could destroy innocent careers while genuine threats escape detection. Over the following 2 weeks, Rachel's team conducted comprehensive analysis of Rodriguez's activities using both automated monitoring and human intelligence techniques. The investigation revealed a complex picture that challenged their initial assumptions about his motivations and activities. Rodriguez was indeed communicating with foreign contacts, but the conversations focused on legitimate cybersecurity research rather than intelligence sharing. His unusual system access patterns reflected his thesis research on military network vulnerabilities, work that was approved by his chain of command but not properly documented in security databases. The case demonstrated both the potential and limitations of automated insider threat detection. The algorithms correctly identified unusual behaviors that warranted investigation, but human analysis was essential to distinguish between concerning activities and innocent explanations. This validates our human-in-the-loop approach, Dr. Vasquez observed during the after-action review. Automated systems can identify anomalies, but trained analysts must evaluate context and intent. However, the investigation also revealed gaps in their monitoring capabilities. Rodriguez's legitimate research activities had triggered security alerts precisely because the system lacked comprehensive understanding of authorized research projects and educational pursuits that involved sensitive topics.
Rachel proposed additional enhancements to address these blind spots. We need better integration with personnel management systems, educational databases, and project authorization records. The algorithms should understand which unusual activities are officially approved rather than flagging everything that deviates from normal patterns. As her team worked to implement these improvements, Rachel received intelligence that would validate their entire approach in the most dramatic way possible. NSA interceptors had detected communications between known foreign intelligence operatives discussing plans to recruit additional military insiders using methods similar to Garrett's original compromise. They're specifically targeting personnel who exhibit stress indicators or career dissatisfaction, reported Colonel Patricia Hayes, who had been promoted to head the military's new Insider Threat Countermeasures Division. Foreign recruitment operations are using psychological profiling to identify vulnerable military personnel. The intelligence confirmed Rachel's worst fears about the evolving threat landscape. Foreign adversaries weren't just opportunistically exploiting military insiders. They were systematically identifying and targeting personnel who might be susceptible to recruitment based on behavioral analysis of their digital activities. This means our detection system is racing against foreign recruitment operations, Rachel realized. We need to identify at-risk personnel before hostile intelligence services do. The competitive dynamic transformed insider threat detection from passive monitoring to active protection of military personnel. Rachel's system would need to identify soldiers experiencing career difficulties, financial stress, or personal problems that might make them vulnerable to foreign recruitment. Not for punishment, but for intervention and support. Dr. Vasquez outlined the psychological framework for this protective approach. Instead of waiting for personnel to cross security lines, we should identify early warning indicators and provide counseling, career guidance, or financial assistance to address underlying vulnerabilities. The shift from punishment to prevention represented a fundamental evolution in military security thinking. Rather than catching traitors after they betrayed their country, the system would help soldiers before they reached that breaking point. Rachel began designing enhanced algorithms that could identify personnel experiencing the types of stress that foreign intelligence services targeted for recruitment. The technical challenge involved distinguishing between normal career disappointments and the deeper disillusionment that might lead to betrayal. As she worked late into the night refining these protective algorithms, Rachel reflected on how her own career journey had brought her to this point. Her experience with career setbacks and administrative punishment gave her unique insight into the psychological factors that could drive military personnel toward desperate decisions. The irony wasn't lost on her that the same system she was building might have flagged her own behavioral patterns during her lowest moments after the Estonia incident. The difference was that she had found a path back to meaningful work, while others like Garrett had chosen betrayal instead. Her phone displayed a message from General Morrison. Initial deployment approval granted for 15 installations. Outstanding work on the Rodriguez case. Exactly the kind of nuanced approach we needed. Rachel saved her work and prepared to head back to her quarters, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges in protecting military personnel from both foreign recruitment and their own darkest impulses. The system she was building would either revolutionize military security or create the surveillance state that drove personnel toward the very betrayals it was designed to prevent. The balance between protection and liberty remained as delicate as ever. But Rachel Martinez had learned that sometimes the most important battles were fought not against external enemies, but against the human vulnerabilities that made betrayal possible in the first place. 1 year after the Garrett incident, Warrant Officer Rachel Martinez received the most challenging assignment of her career: investigating suspected foreign infiltration of the very insider threat detection program she had created. Intelligence analysts at the Defense Intelligence Agency had discovered encrypted communications suggesting that hostile actors were attempting to compromise her revolutionary security system from within. The irony was profound. The program designed to protect against insider threat was itself potentially compromised by an insider threat. As Rachel walked through the secure corridors of Fort Gordon's Cyber Warfare Center, she wondered if the enemy she was hunting might be someone she had personally recruited and trained. Director Amanda Foster, no relation to the FBI's Diana Foster, had been appointed to oversee the investigation from the Department of Defense's Internal Security Division. Her reputation for uncovering sophisticated espionage operations had earned her to this most sensitive case. The intercepted communications suggest someone with administrative access to your detection algorithms has been feeding information to foreign intelligence services, Foster briefed Rachel in a windowless conference room. They know exactly how your system identifies suspicious behavior, which means they can train their agents to avoid detection. The implications were staggering. If foreign adversaries understood the behavioral patterns that triggered security alerts, they could coach their recruited assets to appear completely normal while conducting espionage activities. The system would become useless, possibly worse than useless. It might provide false confidence while genuine threats operated undetected. Rachel studied the communications intercepts the DIA had provided. The technical details discussed in foreign intelligence channels demonstrated intimate knowledge of her algorithms, including recent modifications that had been implemented only in the past month. The leak was not only current but had access to the most classified aspects of the program. "How many people have administrative access to the core algorithms?" Foster asked. 12, Rachel replied grimly. 5 software engineers, 3 behavioral analysts, 2 military liaisons, myself, and Chief Warrant Officer Thompson. Each person on that list had been extensively vetted through background investigations, psychological evaluations, and polygraph examinations. They represented the most trusted personnel in military cybersecurity, yet one of them was apparently betraying everything they had sworn to protect. Foster outlined the investigation parameters. We need to identify the compromised individual without alerting them to our suspicions. If they realize we're investigating, they'll either cease activities or feed us disinformation that could compromise ongoing operations. Rachel understood the delicate balance required. Traditional investigation methods, monitoring communications, analyzing financial records, conducting interrogations, could alert the suspect while providing limited insight into sophisticated espionage tradecraft. They needed a more subtle approach.
"I propose using the system against itself," Rachel suggested. "We create false modifications to the algorithms and brief each suspect individually on different fake updates. Whichever false information appears in foreign intercepts will identify our compromise." The canary trap methodology was classic counterintelligence technique, but implementing it within their own security system required careful orchestration. Rachel would need to create convincing false intelligence while maintaining operational security about the investigation itself. Dr. Vasquez joined the planning session to provide psychological insight into potential suspect motivations. Financial pressure, career disappointment, ideological disillusionment, or personal blackmail. Any of these factors could drive someone to betrayal despite passing security screenings. Rachel began developing behavioral profiles for each person with administrative access, looking for indicators that might suggest vulnerability to foreign recruitment. The analysis made her uncomfortable. She was applying the same techniques designed to protect military personnel against her own trusted colleagues. The investigation took an unexpected turn when routine financial monitoring revealed that Staff Sergeant Michael Chen, brother of the former specialist David Chen who had earlier congratulated Rachel on her promotion, had been making unusual cryptocurrency transactions. The timing coincided with recent algorithm modifications that had subsequently appeared in foreign intelligence communications. Chen has been converting salary payments to cryptocurrency and transferring funds through multiple international exchanges, Foster reported. The pattern suggests deliberate attempts to obscure financial transactions. Rachel reviewed Chen's personnel file and work history. He had joined her team 6 months earlier as a software engineer with exemplary technical credentials and security clearances. His psychological evaluations showed no concerning indicators, and his work performance had been outstanding. But personal investigation revealed troubling details about Chen's family circumstances. His parents required expensive medical care that strained his finances, while his younger sister needed specialized education services that insurance didn't cover. The financial pressures provided classic motivation for espionage recruitment. "We need more evidence before making accusations," Rachel insisted, remembering the lessons learned from the Rodriguez investigation. Unusual financial transactions and family pressure don't prove espionage activity. Foster coordinated with NSA to implement enhanced surveillance of Chen's communications, while Rachel prepared the canary trap that would definitively identify whether he was the source of leaked information. The false algorithm modification involved supposed enhancements to behavioral detection that would make foreign recruitment more difficult. If Chen was compromised, this false information would likely appear in foreign intelligence communications within 72 hours as his handlers attempted to understand and counter the supposed improvements to American insider threat detection capabilities. During the waiting period, Rachel found herself observing Chen's behavior with new scrutiny. He worked normal hours, interacted professionally with colleagues, and showed no obvious signs of stress or deception. If he was conducting espionage, his operational security was excellent. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Vasquez noticed that Chen had been accessing psychological profiles of military personnel outside his technical responsibilities. The access wasn't flagged by security systems because his credentials allowed it, but the behavioral analysis raised questions about his motivations. Why would a software engineer need detailed psychological profiles of soldiers at bases where our system isn't even deployed? Vasquez wondered. Rachel immediately understood the implications. If Chen was providing foreign intelligence services with information about American military personnel psychology, they could use that data to improve their recruitment operations. The scope of potential damage extended far beyond compromising detection algorithms. "The full access logs for the past 6 months, Rachel ordered. "I want to see every file he's opened, every system he's accessed, every query he's run." The comprehensive analysis revealed a disturbing pattern. Chen had systematically accessed psychological profiles, financial records, and personal information for hundreds of military personnel across multiple installations. The data collection went far beyond anything required for his legitimate duties. More troubling was the selection criteria he appeared to be using. Chen had focused on personnel with security clearances who showed indicators of financial stress, career disappointment, or personal problems. The pattern exactly matched Foreign Intelligence Service's known recruitment targeting criteria. "He's not just leaking algorithm information," Rachel realized with a growing alarm. Chen is providing foreign handlers with detailed targeting packages for recruiting additional insider threats. The revelation transformed their understanding of the investigation's scope and urgency. Chen wasn't just a single compromised individual. He was enabling a systematic campaign to recruit military insiders using the very data intended to protect them. Foster immediately escalated the case to Pentagon leadership, while Rachel coordinated with FBI counterintelligence units to prepare for Chen's arrest. But they needed to capture him in the act of transmitting information to confirm espionage charges that would survive legal scrutiny. The canary trap yielded results within 48 hours. NSA intercepts revealed foreign intelligence communications discussing the false algorithm modifications that Rachel had shared exclusively with Chen. The evidence provided definitive proof that he was transmitting classified information to hostile foreign actors. "We have probable cause for immediate arrest," Foster announced during an emergency briefing, "but we should coordinate the timing to maximize intelligence value and minimize damage to ongoing operations." Rachel proposed conducting the arrest during Chen's next scheduled communication with foreign handlers, using the opportunity to feed disinformation that might disrupt broader recruitment operations. The approach required precise timing and coordination between multiple agencies. The operation commenced at 21:30 hours on a Tuesday evening when surveillance teams observed Chen leaving Fort Gordon and driving to a secure location where he typically conducted his espionage communications. FBI agents maintained distant surveillance while Rachel monitored his digital activities through compromised systems. Chen activated encrypted communication software and began transmitting detailed psychological profiles for 12 military personnel who showed vulnerability indicators. The data included financial information, family circumstances, career frustrations, and specific recommendations for recruitment approaches that would exploit individual psychological weaknesses.
"This is beyond espionage," Rachel observed with disgust. "He's systematically targeting our most vulnerable personnel for foreign manipulation." FBI agents moved to arrest Chen as he completed the transmission, but the timing allowed foreign handlers to receive the intelligence before communications were severed. The damage was already done. 12 American military personnel were now potential targets for sophisticated recruitment operations. Chen offered no resistance during his arrest, maintaining professional demeanor even as agents secured evidence of his espionage activities. His calm response suggested either exceptional operational training or resigned acceptance that his betrayal had finally been discovered. The subsequent interrogation revealed the full scope of his compromise. Chen had been recruited 18 months earlier through social media connections that gradually developed into financial incentives and ideological manipulation. Foreign handlers had specifically targeted him because of his access to the Insider Threat Detection Program. "They knew about your system before it was fully operational," Chen admitted during questioning. "My recruitment was part of a larger operation to compromise American cybersecurity capabilities from within." The revelation indicated that foreign intelligence services had identified Rachel's program as a significant threat to their insider recruitment operations and had moved proactively to neutralize it. Chen's compromise was strategic rather than opportunistic. Foster coordinated damage assessment while Rachel worked to modify detection algorithms that had been compromised by Chen's access. The technical challenge involved redesigning systems while foreign adversaries possessed detailed knowledge of previous approaches. "We need to assume they know everything about our current capabilities," Rachel told her remaining team members. "The entire system architecture requires fundamental modification to restore effectiveness." The rebuilding process would take months and require developing new behavioral analysis techniques that foreign intelligence services hadn't observed. Rachel found herself essentially starting over, with the added challenge of countering adversaries who understood her previous methods. Dr. Vasquez provided psychological insight into Chen's motivations that would inform future security measures. Financial pressure combined with gradual ideological manipulation created vulnerability that traditional security screening couldn't detect. The recruitment was professionally orchestrated over extended timeframes. The case demonstrated that insider threat detection systems themselves required protection against insider threats, a recursive security challenge that added layers of complexity to an already difficult problem. As Rachel worked to rebuild her compromised program, she received notification that the 12 military personnel identified in Chen's final transmission had been placed under protective surveillance. Counterintelligence teams were monitoring for foreign recruitment attempts while providing the targeted individuals with financial counseling and career guidance to address their underlying vulnerabilities. "We're racing against foreign recruitment operations," Foster observed. "They have detailed psychological profiles and recruitment strategies for these personnel. Our intervention needs to address their vulnerabilities before foreign handlers can exploit them." The protective approach represented evolution in counterintelligence thinking. Instead of waiting for recruitment attempts to succeed, American security services were proactively supporting vulnerable personnel to prevent successful foreign manipulation.
6 months later, Rachel's rebuilt insider threat detection program achieved initial operational capability with enhanced security measures designed to prevent future compromise. General Morrison visited Fort Gordon to review the program's progress and assess the impact of the Chen investigation on military cybersecurity doctrine. Her evaluation would determine whether insider threat detection remained viable or required fundamental reconceptualization. The Chen case proved that our most sophisticated security systems remain vulnerable to human factors, Morrison observed, but it also demonstrated that proper investigation techniques can identify and neutralize compromised individuals before catastrophic damage occurs. Rachel had survived another crisis that could have destroyed her career and credibility. The rebuilt detection system showed promise for addressing evolving threats, while the Chen investigation had enhanced understanding of foreign intelligence recruitment operations. But the experience left Rachel with sobering awareness of the perpetual nature of her mission. Each success in protecting military networks would prompt adversaries to develop new attack methods, creating an endless cycle of adaptation and counter-adaptation. As she prepared for her next assignment, leading a joint task force on international cybersecurity cooperation, Rachel reflected on the journey that had brought her from administrative exile to the forefront of military cyber warfare. Her willingness to challenge conventional approaches had repeatedly created both opportunities and dangers, but it had also positioned her to address threats that traditional military thinking couldn't comprehend. The final message in her Fort Gordon office inbox came from an unexpected source. Thomas Garrett, writing from federal prison where he was serving a 25-year sentence for espionage. His brief note contained a single sentence that would guide her future work. The real enemy isn't the technology, it's the human capacity for betrayal that technology enables. Rachel Martinez closed her office for the final time, carrying with her the knowledge that protecting American military networks required understanding both the technical systems that connected them and the human motivations that could corrupt them. The war for cybersecurity would be won or lost not in code, but in the hearts and minds of the people trusted to defend their nation's most vital secrets. 3 days before her departure from Fort Gordon, Rachel received clearance to review the complete damage assessment from Chen's espionage activities. The classified report painted a disturbing picture of foreign intelligence capabilities that extended far beyond what military leadership had previously understood. Chen's handlers had used the psychological profiles he provided to successfully recruit 4 additional military personnel across different installations. These new assets were feeding classified information to foreign adversaries while maintaining perfect operational security that avoided detection by traditional counterintelligence methods.
The recruitment network is exponentially expanding, reported Colonel Hayes during Rachel's final security briefing. Each compromised individual provides intelligence that enables recruitment of additional assets. We're facing a cascading compromise scenario that could ultimately infiltrate thousands of military personnel. The mathematical progression was terrifying. If each recruited asset enabled recruitment of 2 additional individuals, the network would double in size every operational cycle. Within 5 years, foreign intelligence services could possess human intelligence assets throughout the American military establishment. Rachel's successor, newly promoted Major Jennifer Park, would inherit responsibility for developing countermeasures against this evolving threat. But the technical challenges were unprecedented. How do you protect against adversaries who understand your protection methods better than you understand their attack techniques? The fundamental assumption underlying all cybersecurity has been invalidated, Rachel explained to Park during their transition briefing. We designed systems to protect against external threats, but the most dangerous adversaries are already inside our networks with legitimate access credentials. Park's background in artificial intelligence research provided a unique perspective on potential solutions. We need systems that can identify compromised individuals even when they're following all established security protocols, she proposed. The detection criteria must focus on intent rather than behavior. The concept represented a quantum leap in cybersecurity thinking.
Instead of monitoring what people did, the system would need to understand why they did it, a challenge that required breakthrough advances in psychological analysis and predictive modeling. Rachel spent her final days at Fort Gordon documenting lessons learned and strategic recommendations for addressing the evolving insider threat landscape. Her analysis concluded that traditional military organizational structures were fundamentally incompatible with effective cybersecurity in an environment where trusted personnel could be systematically compromised by foreign adversaries. The solution required rethinking basic assumptions about security clearances, access controls, and operational procedures. Military units needed compartmentalized information architectures that limited damage from insider threats while maintaining operational effectiveness, a seemingly impossible balance. Her most controversial recommendation involved implementing mandatory psychological monitoring for all personnel with access to classified systems. The proposal would revolutionize military culture by acknowledging that psychological vulnerability was an operational security risk requiring constant management. Military leaders resist acknowledging that psychological factors affect operational security, Rachel wrote in her final report. But foreign adversaries have no such reluctance. They systematically exploit psychological vulnerabilities while we pretend they don't exist. The cultural transformation required would be as significant as the technological innovations. Military organizations prided themselves on trust, loyalty, and unit cohesion, values that could be exploited by sophisticated psychological manipulation campaigns targeting individual personnel. On her final morning at Fort Gordon, Rachel conducted one last review of the rebuilt insider threat detection system. The algorithms were more sophisticated than anything she had originally envisioned, incorporating advances in behavioral psychology, artificial intelligence, and predictive analytics that could identify potential compromises months before traditional indicators appeared. But the system's effectiveness ultimately depended on human operators who possessed the judgment to distinguish between genuine threats and false alarms. No amount of technological sophistication could eliminate the need for trained analysts who understand both technical systems and human psychology. Dr. Vasquez joined Rachel for this final system review, bringing psychological insights that would guide future development efforts. The Chen case taught us that traditional recruitment indicators are obsolete. Modern foreign intelligence operations create psychological dependencies that don't trigger conventional warning signs. The evolution in espionage tradecraft matched advances in cybersecurity technology. As detection capabilities improved, recruitment methods became more sophisticated, creating an endless cycle of adaptation that required constant innovation in both technical and human intelligence disciplines. Rachel's phone buzzed with a secure message from General Morrison. Your recommendations have been approved for implementation across all service branches. Report to Pentagon Monday for briefing on new assignment leading International Cybersecurity Cooperation Initiative. The international dimension would introduce additional complexity as Rachel worked with allied nations whose cybersecurity capabilities and threat environments varied dramatically. Coordinating protection against insider threats required sharing sensitive intelligence about vulnerabilities that could themselves be exploited by adversaries. As Rachel prepared to leave Fort Gordon, she reflected on the personal cost of her cybersecurity career. The constant suspicion, perpetual vigilance, and knowledge of human capacity for betrayal had fundamentally altered her worldview. Trust had become a luxury she could no longer afford in professional relationships. Yet the mission remained essential. American military superiority increasingly depended on information systems that are only as secure as the people who operated them. Protecting those systems required understanding and countering the human vulnerabilities that foreign adversaries exploit with growing sophistication. Her final act at Fort Gordon involved visiting the secure facility where Chen's personal effects were stored pending completion of his legal proceedings. Among his belongings, investigators had found handwritten notes detailing psychological manipulation techniques that foreign handlers had used during his recruitment process. The notes revealed a systematic approach to identifying and exploiting individual vulnerabilities that went far beyond financial incentives or ideological manipulation. Chen's handlers had studied his personality, family relationships, career aspirations, and personal insecurities to craft a recruitment approach specifically designed for his psychological profile. This level of personalization explains why traditional counterintelligence methods fail to detect his compromise. Foreign intelligence services are developing individual-specific recruitment strategies that bypass conventional warning indicators. The sophistication suggested that foreign adversaries possessed detailed psychological profiles for thousands of American military personnel, enabling surgical recruitment operations that targeted specific individuals with precisely crafted manipulation campaigns.
Rachel Martinez departed Fort Gordon knowing that her work had protected American military networks from catastrophic compromise while revealing the true scope of threats facing national security in the digital age. The Chen investigation had prevented immediate damage but exposed vulnerabilities that would require years of sustained effort to address. Her journey from administrative exile to cybersecurity leadership had demonstrated that unconventional thinking was essential for confronting unconventional threats. The next phase of her career would determine whether those lessons could be applied on a global scale to protect not just American interests, but the broader alliance structure that underpinned international security. The war for cybersecurity was entering a new phase where human psychology would prove as important as technical expertise and where victory would require understanding adversaries who exploited the very trust that democratic societies depended upon for their survival. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.